Everyone interprets that message the same way these days. Religion in this country even seems weaponized at times. As a man of deep faith, which you obviously are, does that frustrate you at all?
The followers. And there was injustice in that. And, you know, anytime you see injustice taking place, Jesus is not going to be happy about that. And so
this is the most un-Christian Christian movie I've ever seen.
For these people that were kind of referring to whoever they are in that space, that might be hostile towards people, you know, that have my beliefs. Well, why do they want me on? Is it just to try to make an example of me? Is it just to try to like pick on me? Because that's going to reveal.
Jonathan Roumie of The Chosen has gained wide attention for his portrayal of Jesus and his unashamed confession of faith. But in this very interview with PixEI, what the host didn't expect was how he carefully dismantled their atheistic points of view after they intentionally used this particular clip from a series out of all others. Take a look.
It is on its way to becoming one of the most popular TV series of all time, with a fan base all over the world.
We are talking about The Chosen. Here's a look.
You Pharisees, you cleanse the outside of a cup and the dish, and then you eat and drink food that goes into a body that inside is full of greed and wickedness. You fools! Did not he who made the outside make the inside also? But give as alms those things that are within.
Now, why would the hosts use that particular clip as an opener to the interview? And most importantly, what's the implication behind that very clip? Before we get into that very question, let's quickly analyze how the actor dismantled their questions one by one. And by the end of the day, you'll see why this wasn't just an interview, but an outright interrogation. They tried to make Jonathan admit that why he played Jesus in the TV show was only because that's all he ever was, a character, a figure from an old book. But that wasn't all. They pressed further, asking if the pressure hadn't ever weighed on him. And what pressure exactly were they asking about? Watch out.
And Elizabeth Tavish, who portrays Mary Magdalene. Good morning. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Congrats on the popularity of the show.
Thank you.
It's a huge deal.
It's wild.
We were just talking in the break. I have to know, do you guys feel this added pressure playing these enormous characters, Jesus and Mary Magdalene?
They were talking about the pressure of pretending to be something divine. But Roumie let them understand it's not about pretending. He was in the show for a reason. God put him in this position, and he's learned to accept that. Even Jesus faced doubt. He was challenged at every turn, just like he was being challenged now.
I think I felt the pressure pretty early on. And then after a little bit of reflection, I realized that I'm here playing this role for a reason. You know, I think God put me in this position for a very specific reason. And so I have to accept that and just do the best I can with the gifts and talent.
After escaping that one, they tried to corner Jonathan again with another obtrusive question about his popularity. They assumed Roumie was famous now because he was just like every other actor in Hollywood, which revolved around a cycle of actors playing roles and fading into obscurity.
Story, obviously, one of the best stories you're pulling from the Bible. You're relatable and you're aspirational, so you kind of have the best of both worlds. People are obviously interested in the characters, Mary Magdalene and Jesus, but now fans are really interested in you guys as people. How has that been?
In their minds, they had finally gotten him where they wanted. It was clear they weren't really looking for his answer. Rather, they wanted to analyze which direction it will lean, whether he will admit to fame or deny it. But watch how Jonathan roasted them.
You know, fame is a double-edged sword. You know, it gets you certain benefits in society, and other times you have unexpected encounters with people that are super passionate about the show, and some of them are more appropriately timed encounters than others. But at the end of the day, I think you just have to, you know, just be present with people and have grace and kindness. And when people are sort of occasionally overstepping boundaries of space, you just try to gently let them know that, you know, I'm Jonathan, I'm not Jesus. So, you know, I kind of need my own sort of space as a person, as a human being. Even Jesus needed space. That's why he went off to pray by himself so often, because he was swarmed by people. So it's something that in a sort of a a microcosm, I'm beginning to understand why he needed to.
You could see Jonathan putting them in check, explaining that fame is temporary. Jesus had followers too, but he also had enemies. Even he needed time alone. He withdrew. He prayed. The hosts had expected a celebrity's shallow answer, but were met instead with wisdom that transcends time.
Oh, wow. Well, we know the stories from the Bible are obviously deep. This season is going to take an even deeper tone. Can you kind of guide us into that, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think we start to see the beginning of the end of Jesus' ministry on earth, and how he gets to that point, how we get to the inevitable crucifixion.
Now it's clear why they chose that particular opening clip of Jesus speaking about hypocrisy. They wanted to portray Christianity in an unfavorable light. They failed woefully, but that's just the scratch, because what those hosts faced is nothing compared to the humiliation the ladies of The View suffered when Jonathan Roumie was invited to their controversial show.
Welcome, Jonathan Roumie.
Guys. Wow.
I feel like I should bless myself. I feel like that.
It was supposed to be a simple interview, a casual conversation about The Chosen. But what the host didn't anticipate was Roumie turning the discussion into an absolute masterclass in faith. A moment so profound it left even their atheist minds reeling.
Yeah.
You play Jesus.
You?
So are you finding that people are having a little bit of trouble in separating you from the part?
Watch out, because they weren't expecting the kind of responses he came with.
Actually, ourselves in these characters, like any great TV show, you start to identify. And then the fact that it's this story, that it's the greatest story ever told, now brings it to a whole other level. And they're like, oh, I can relate to Jesus in a way that I never thought I could before.
It really is relatable.
Roumie understood the precarious position he was being put in the moment one of them leaned in, clearly eager to challenge Roumie on religion's role in modern society.
Our crew, Zach, came to me months ago and said, I'm Catholic. You got to watch this show about Jesus. I was like, I know a lot about Jesus, and I don't, obviously.
I think there's always more to learn.
There's always more to learn, and what you're so profound. I think what was fascinating to me is growing up, I always saw
Sunny's ignorance was exposed so brutally, she had to admit there's a lot more she didn't know.
About Jesus, and I don't, obviously.
I think there's always more to learn.
There's always more to learn, and what you're so profound.
She had started off the session thinking this was going to be another one of those segments where faith was subtly mocked, where belief was dismissed as wishful thinking. But how wrong she was.
So you've been playing Jesus on The Chosen for 5 seasons now. What sort of conversations did you and Dallas have initially about the kind of Jesus that you wanted to show? Because your Jesus it's a very different portrayal than Jim Caviezel.
There are interviews, and then there are moments that shake the room, moments that leave even the most hardened skeptics scrambling for words. Jonathan Roumie's conversation with his interviewer was one such.
Jim Caviezel's Jesus in The Passion of the Christ, or Willem Dafoe's in The Last Temptation of Christ, or you know what else is a good one, but also very different than yours is Max von Sydow.
Oh, yeah.
The greatest story ever told.
Mm-hmm.
But all of those Jesuses or Jezi, I don't know what they would.
Right from the start, Roumie's presence was calm, yet commanding. The topic was faith in an increasingly secular world, a world that, as Roumie puts it, has tried to banish God from visible culture. The host, though respectful, was skeptical, but that skepticism wouldn't last long.
In some ways, contemporary feeling Jesus.
I think what makes it feel like that we have, that all of those other portrayals didn't have access to, was the format of time in long-form storytelling to build characters and build relationships over episodes. You're seeing the nuances of his character, his quirks, the things that nobody's ever taken the time to explore are
the humanity of these characters, the day-to-day of these characters. And so if you believe they existed, and I do, they were human beings. So theology...
Roumie's portrayal of Jesus in The Chosen has resonated with millions because, unlike past depictions, his Jesus feels real. He laughs, he cries, he jokes, and he struggles. This wasn't a distant, untouchable deity. It was a Jesus people could relate to.
Why? And then he goes through it. I'm like, okay, I get that.
I'm just in my head, I was thinking of that sort of cliche of an actor saying, oh, what's my motivation? And in your case, the answer was, we got to bring about the salvation of the world. Play it like that.
Saving souls. I got to save more souls.
And so the decision was made that you were going to do The Chosen. Before that, maybe scuffling is too strong of a word, but you were just sort of a jobbing actor.
Struggle busing.
Struggle busing. How does it happen that a struggle busing actor makes it big playing Jesus?
I think that the path to that is absolute and uncompromising surrendering to a higher power, things that are beyond my control.
Because this wasn't just an actor speaking. It was a man who deeply believes what he portrays. Then came the question that changed the tone of the conversation when the host asked if he thinks a non-believer could authentically play Jesus.
What does your faith allow you to give to the role that a non-believer or a non... You know, it's interesting because you're saying that who you are allows you to play the role of Jesus with a particular authenticity. Do you feel that someone who is a non-believer could credibly...
Roumie paused, smiled, then, in a measured tone, delivered one of the most profound responses I've ever heard.
Believer or non-Catholic might not be able to give.
I feel that it lends an authenticity to the role that allows me to understand more of why Jesus did the things he did and said the things he did than somebody who is completely unfamiliar. And I think I struggle to follow Jesus like anybody else who considers themselves a Christian. But the struggle is part of it. And I think God knows what we struggle with, but we're still challenged to do what he would do in those situations. And I think because I actually believe that seems to have lent me a kind of credibility and an authenticity in approaching the character that maybe people haven't seen.
At this point, the host was totally speechless. But Roumie's own story is one of surrender, something many atheists, including this host, struggle to grasp.
Idea that you're getting that sort of attention combined with the fact that you're getting it for playing Jesus strikes me as a potentially psychologically and spiritually combustible situation. Does it feel that way to you?
No, because I recognize that none of this is about me. I don't matter in the grand scheme of things. And so I recognize that when I come out to those speeches and people react the way they do and people yell at...
Roumie narrates how he spent years trying to control his own life, how he chased success but kept failing. It wasn't until he fell to my knees and surrendered to God that everything changed. 3 months later, he got The Chosen.
Nothing here.
Yeah.
You don't matter.
Dust in the wind.
But then also with what you said about feeling like you've been put here for a reason, that you're saying there is something special about you. Those seem to me like somewhat contradictory ideas. How do you reconcile them? And then also, there was never some small part of you that's like, oh, I am special. There's people liking me so because I'm special, and that means that I matter in some way. None of that little sort of ego gratification temptation ever creeps into your head?
I think if I said there wasn't anything at all, I'd be lying. Do I allow it to become my reason for doing what I do? No. So the paradox that you're describing, I guess it is kind of hard to make that distinction. Yes, there's for me a sense of mission, but the mission is about Jesus, in this case with The Chosen. It's about God. That's what this experience is.
This is where Rumie's words pierce through the skeptic mindset. Atheism thrives on control, on the idea that humans shape their own destiny. But what if true freedom comes from letting go? But the moment of total humiliation came when Roumie made this atheist host understand that being a Christian comes with many battles, including spiritual attacks.
Roxy McDevitt says, Jonathan, have you experienced more escalated levels of spiritual warfare the longer you've been in this unique role? What are some of the ways you fight spiritual attacks?
Being a Christian comes with deep spiritual battles, and Jonathan Roumie has felt the weight of that responsibility. In this interview, he openly discusses the spiritual attacks he has endured and how he fights them, and with a grace so profound it brought the host to his knees.
Well, I fight any and all spiritual attacks with prayer, like the Rosary, Divine Mercy, the Angelus, all of those. I feel like I've become more hyper aware of spiritual warfare, and I've probably sensed more attacks. I haven't been struck by lightning, praise Jesus, at this point.
That did happen, didn't it?
Happened to Jim, yeah, while he was on the cross. So I'm praying that doesn't happen.
That's right. We're going to make sure it's a real clear day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did he tell you what that was like?
I mean, it's
just crazy.
Yeah. Basically that's kind of what the reaction was. It's like I think he's been able to make sense of it as just being part of Christ's suffering. At the end of the day, everything that he experienced, dislocating shoulder, he had heart surgery, he had all these things happen to him, as just offering it up, and anything that...
His words suggest that spiritual warfare is not just metaphorical. It manifests physically and emotionally. But this is something an atheist never believes in, of course. How can they believe in what they denounce? When asked how he combats these attacks, Roumie doesn't hesitate. Prayer.
Those 2 weeks was for the Last Supper, and I had my spiritual director. He came out to be with me, and I was sitting in the hair and makeup chair, and next thing I know, like I get these massive pains, like just shooting up into my ear, and I'm like, it's just anxiety. It's like at one point I had heart palpitations. I'm like, okay, I don't know what's happening, but I'm just and I texted my spiritual director, who was in the other room, and he's like, I'm saying a rosary for you right now. And in 15 minutes, it all went away and everything was fine. But I think kind of speaking to what the sort of attacks and things like that, I think the spiritual attacks kind of manifest themselves in so many different kinds of ways. Maybe that's some of it. Maybe that's just physical anxiety. Maybe that's just me trying to do the best I can and not, ruin it for Jesus. So,
Roumie hasn't faced anything that extreme, but he acknowledges that suffering seems to come with portraying Christ.
To be able to book a job, but I wanted to have a firm technique that I could survive on. And so I trained in Eric Morris's system. Oh, yeah. And he was, basically a guy that combined a number of different method-based systems together to create like one of the most comprehensive acting systems anybody could ever study, which I use still to this day.
You still use that to prepare for the... How did you apply that to this role? I mean, the challenge is...
Yeah.
You don't have the raw stuff that other, you can base it on somebody, you can build a role on a historic figure.
I can't watch video exactly.
No, there's no YouTube of Jesus.
There's no YouTube of Jesus.
Well, there is now on The Chosen, but before there was.
For me, it kind of stems back to the challenges of playing Jesus to begin with. Like, well, how do you do that? Robert Powell once in an interview said, to try to tackle the character of Jesus, I mean, he's unplayable. Like, it's just...
In a world where faith is increasingly questioned, Jonathan Roumie stands as an undeniable force, a man whose conviction and humility make disbelief seem almost irrational. And when he made the next statement, it totally put off the atheist interviewer.
He's impossible to play. So none of us know what it's like to be divine. We do know what it's like to be human. So the thing that I do is to bring the utmost of my humanity to the role as Jesus, and then let the Lord and the Holy Spirit sort out the divinity aspects of it. And so...
I bring as much humanity as I can, he says. The divinity? I leave that to the Holy Spirit. That statement alone is a direct challenge to atheism. Atheists argue that Jesus was just a man, another teacher. Rumie's response is that Jesus was fully human, but also fully God, and his portrayal reflects both.
So when there are moments in the story, in The Chosen, where we see Jesus, the fullness of his humanity, or he's having, he's experiencing what he would have experienced as a human being, I can only bring my own emotional life to that. And if it's not something that happens just out of, the result of the exchange of dialogue with myself and my colleague, then I have to find a way to stimulate whatever emotion that I think the scene obligates. And then I'll go into my toolbox, and often that stems with sense memory as one of the most fundamental aspects of the method.
You said something, the more you count on God, the deeper he takes you. Where has he taken you in this role?
Oh, I think he's taken me closer to the heart of Jesus. He's taken me to the essence of servanthood and servitude and surrender, really. That's been...
This moment exposes the fundamental flaw in atheist reasoning. Skeptics often believe everything happens by chance, that life is purely random. But how do you explain this? How does a man on the verge of giving up land, the most transformative role of his life, purely from divine intervention?
Series, and possibly of my career, is wrapping my head around how to communicate what actually happened at the Last Supper in a way that people feel that, as opposed to merely just hearing the words in Scripture, but feel what it is that he meant, and not knowing what exactly that looked like. So the only option I have, whether it's that or it's in the Garden of Gethsemane where he's sweating drops like blood or blood, depending on the translation you read, what generated that? What did that feel like? I have no idea. So I have to surrender that moment and say, God, you have to direct my steps in these scenes, because they're beyond my comprehension. They're beyond my ability to infer what you were feeling. Like, Lord only knows. But I'm here, I'm open, I'm a vessel. Use me the way you want people to experience these.
At that moment, it was clear atheism offers doubt, but faith offers proof through transformation. And Jonathan Roumie, he's living proof that Jesus is still at work. What do you think about Rumie's responses to these atheist interviewers? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.